ways that Democrats organize and campaign here in Valencia County are things like we will do postcard parties, we will have phone banking, and then we do a lot of door-to-door canvassing. We're a very red county, so we do run up into our fair share of issues, especially with door-to-door canvassing. And because we're rural, we have to always, like keep safety at the top of our minds so no one's going out by themselves and we have groups of folks.
Our part of the state contains very metropolitan areas and also rural areas. So we have some different techniques for each, but largely, and the most effective and impactful way that we have found is to knock doors, get out and canvass and talk to people in the areas around us.
Campaigning in rural areas presents a little bit of a different challenge, but a lot of the same similarities. Of course, we do, like everyone else, we do phone banking and canvassing. We have house parties, meet and greets, fundraisers, and we try to engage all ages and all groups.
Engagement is difficult, but we've had a bigger presence than we have had since I took over. So slowly we're getting people to come to meetings.
What's important is that we use many different methods to reach populations of people. And that kind of some of that carries over to our more rural areas, like our South Valley. Because we have bigger properties. Sometimes the homes are set away from the road. There's a gate that prevents us from getting in there. And so maybe we're not able to reach them at the door, but we certainly can reach them on the phone. We can also reach them through mailers. We can also reach them through texting.
It's also really great because we get a chance to get to know folks. And I think that that's a really important part of it, because even if we meet someone who's not a Democrat, for instance, but we can have a really good conversation with them, and we might know them from other things that we do in the community, or just events that we all go to. So then we're able to have conversations that maybe we wouldn't have been able to have if everybody was just a complete stranger.
One of the challenges that we have in campaigning in rural areas, and again, it's the distance, right? It's 5.5 hours from Albuquerque, 5 hours from Santa Fe, 4 hours from Las Cruces to Lake County. But the same message comes through and through when we phone bank, or when we have Democrats that used to be Democrats, but now they've switched, and they say they have to have a presence of whomever is running for office. That's really important. They want to see that candidates are vested in rural communities. And, even though they're rural communities and just small votes, they need to know that, that there's that buy-in, and that they do support not just the big communities, but, the big urban areas, but rural communities as well.
We just don't have the numbers of volunteers that it's, it's one thing to live in Bernalillo and have 200 volunteers show up to go canvass. That is unheard of in the rural counties. And so sometimes we can get, maybe 20 people. And that's if we ask other counties to come and help. And then we promise to go and help them. And, I don't think they understand how absolutely stretched thin the counties are in rural areas, and that we do with so little in terms of bodies and people. We don't have those resources. We just don't have them.
Some of the bigger issues that we hear about, we're not seeing in rural areas the massive concern about things that we're hearing in metropolitan. Like, for example, in the metropolitan areas, we're hearing a lot about homelessness, right? The unsheltered populations. But in rural areas, we're not hearing that quite as much. So that's not as much of an issue. But in our rural areas down in the South Valley specifically, we have a lot of farmers, and they're concerned about water, the accessibility of water, the fact that we are in a significant drought, and we have climate issues that are impacting their livelihoods.
Here in Chaves County, and in Roswell in particular, I know that one of the things that we combat is our children grow up and leave. They don't want to stay in Roswell. They don't see Roswell as being a viable place to raise their children or stay. And so we tend to educate children up to high school, and then they very often leave, go to college, and then a large percentage of them don't come back. I mean, I would say most of them don't come back. If we get some that come back, it's not, they're not the Democrats. They're not Democratic people that are coming back. They are Republicans, and very often a lot of those are not people that went to college anyway. They just stayed here, and so that's the largest problem that we have.
So we have, again, some of the very same concerns and issues that, our nation and our state, economic, disparity, right? The differences in wages, that's a really hard thing. And we believe that the economy should work for everyone, not just a specific few. Also think that diversity is our strength. It has to be. And healthcare should be a right and not a privilege. Other things that we consider important: voter suppression, LGBTQ rights. So a lot of the same issues that we take as a national platform and as a state platform are the very same concerns that we have.
Especially here in Valencia County, and I know other counties as well across New Mexico, we have a huge lack of resources. So we don't have a hospital nearby. We have to go to Albuquerque. We often don't have enough ambulances to transport folks if they need to go to a hospital. So healthcare access is huge. We also lack infrastructure for social and behavioral supports. We had one sort of counseling place for like youth, and that recently closed down. So we have our county mental health center, but it's completely overwhelmed. So it's really difficult to get into. And other than that, we don't really have anything. And so everybody has to go to Albuquerque. The problem with that is that we also have a very high poverty rate. So a lot of people don't have transportation, or they're not able to get, to those things that they need, and especially not on a consistent basis. And I don't know, if you've ever been involved with like the mental health system, it can be really difficult. If you miss appointments, then you might, be kicked out from that counselor and not be able to go back. So we have people that really struggle. The other thing is we have a lot of food insecurity, which does happen in urban areas as well, but we don't have options on where to shop for food. So it's often very expensive and very limited. And it's something that's difficult for people to deal with.
What's at stake? Everything. Our healthcare, women's rights, social justice, equality, LGBTQ rights, civil rights, labor rights. I mean, they are trying to decimate the very being in existence of what, we as community members, not just Dems, everybody, what we need to succeed in life and to make life easier for everybody.
Really important for rural areas to be represented in elective office, because they're not often, it's not where we don't make big news, right? So there's not a lot of talk about, Valencia County, that doesn't happen. So we need elected officials who will be our champions and can get past the, the sound bites and all of the things that politics has kind of become.
We're not even part of the equation down here. So, it's all Republican stuff. And that's the problem. We're an afterthought. Oh yeah, there's the other party. That's the problem.
But we need to have those folks in office that are going to support the work that we're doing locally.
It's important because, for one, the accessibility sometimes of the properties it makes it easy, I think, for some campaigns, maybe other parties, to just kind of ignore the issues that are going on in the rural areas because they're harder to get to. But these are voters just the same as voters in our city. They have perspectives on life and the life of New Mexico and New Mexicans that we need to listen to. They're the stewards of our lands, right? And so we need to hear these people's voices just as much as we need to hear about the higher population, the greater populations in this city. So it's really super important, I think, because I think they tend to get left out of the conversation. They tend to get sort of pushed off to the side. Oh, we'll deal with that later. But it's valuable, right? Especially when we're talking about like the history of our lands here in New Mexico, the water, protection of our lands. You know, these are people who live close to the earth and have the climate and Mother Earth at the forefront of their minds. And yeah, we need to hear them. They have just as much a valuable voice as anybody else. Two big issues right now, two big elections that we really have our eye on are the school board elections, because there are efforts around the country and here in New Mexico to limit the way that negatively impact the way that our kids are being treated at schools. Like it's eroding the trust of that the kids have for their teachers or staff. They're trying to, you know, these efforts like Moms for Liberty are trying to ban books that are helpful to learning the history of of the world and the country. And same with the city council. We have a city council right now that's got a conservative majority that has actually done things that to roll back our environmental protections. We have a city council who has voted down women's health care.
When we've had our Republican folks that are in office, you know, they don't access the funds that we need. They don't get junior bill money or don't use all of it. They don't bring the dollars back to Valencia County that we need. And if the money that they do get is often for, you know, pet projects that don't really impact the community as much as it can. So Gabe Vasquez, for instance, has done a lot for Valencia County as well as the rest of his district, but we have to work really, really hard to make sure that he's reelected because we know, you know, that Harold, she didn't even, you know, let folks submit for community project funding. And so that's something that's going to be really important as we move forward because, you know, everywhere infrastructure is crumbling, but here in Valencia County, it's very, very apparent. And we need those funds to keep going.
We have to get out there. We have to make sure that we're advocating to not lose those rights. So my challenge to you from Lee County is that you please get people registered to vote, and more importantly, make sure that you get them to the polls. You know, take a carload and just make a plan, and let's keep New Mexico blue.